Hello, all. Will Chandler here. Obviously, it's about 5 in the morning here, I think, and couldn't really sleep, so I've been up all night just reading and studying and meditating type stuff. I don't sleep too well, obviously, right? But I want to talk about the topic of hell and its then moral implications. First off, on how we define hell, though, I'll start out with saying that, like, the Dante's Inferno type of hell, I think, is a load of BS. And I think a lot of, but then again, a lot of our culture nowadays in respects to hell is kind of based on that. But it's not exactly biblical. Uh, Styles of writing come into play, and especially when we look at the Old Testament, um, you have to understand their styles of writing. Now, of course, some of what is written is going to be exact, right? But the Eastern or Near Eastern way of writing and thought is conveying an idea. It's not like the Greek or Western way of being very exact and precise. It's not uh, the Hebrew way of writing is not going to be like the scientific method, right? And when we look at um, even the use of parables and the imagery that exists in the New Testament, you still see that influence, but you also you can see the Greek influence that has come into, well, let alone the fact that they're written in Greek, right? But you can definitely see the Greek influence on the Jewish thought and style of writing by the time of the New Covenant, New Testament. Now, when we look at hell, let's say Gehenna, right? Valley of Henna, which was kind of a low point, and that would have been like the realm of the dead. And then you have, which I think that was southeast of Jerusalem. Then you had like Mount Zion, which would have been symbolic when they're writing about this stuff, and this would have been instantly recognizable to the people in Jewish culture that there was a line of distinction being made in representation of good versus bad, holy versus unholy. Now, when we go to look at the references to the lake of fire and references to Gehenna, now in our culture now reading that, there's a number of things that we don't recognize instantly that the audience of the day knew without even thinking about it. It would have been, you say something like saying black, someone might say white, right? There were instant things in someone's culture that, in someone, yeah, there are things in all of our cultures that we automatically know. And the references to Gehenna and what it meant were known to the Jews. It wasn't lost on them. So if you rewind history a little bit, why did it become a place of burning trash and a place where bodies were dumped, criminals that were unclaimed and that kind of stuff? Why did it become this? Why was it such a negative connotation? Let's go back to, um, wow, my brain stopped working for a second there. To Moloch. There's some debate whether Moloch and Baal were the same, but let's just go with Moloch. And that was the god that the Israelite people at one time were sacrificing their children to. They'd bring their baby over and throw them in a furnace that looked like a bowl, and they had incense burning. They had drums beating so you couldn't hear the kids. It was the furthest thing from holy, the furthest removal from God and love that you could get. It was the opposite. Now, so we got this Valley Henna. This is where it became known as Gehenna, right? And that's like a low place, a realm of the dead, realm of evil. And then contrast that with how Zion's talked about, right? There's imagery there. Just it's kind of a given. When we look up, it's wonder. You see birds flying. It's kind of like a wonder, especially given not having the technology to be able to understand some things or how stuff worked, right? But there's a natural instinct, I think, there to kind of look at, and you can see this in cultures throughout the world. There's a natural instinct to kind of look at some of these higher places as a more holy versus something that's deep in the ground as not as holy. It's there's imagery there, yes, but there's also, you can see some natural inclinations there. So when Jesus talked about Gehenna, and when the Bible references like a lake of fire and all that, and the realm of the dead, then that's going to be instantly recognizable to the Jew of the time, because there was an abhorrence for what had been done. They recognized how evil it was to have been sacrificing children to Moloch. Funny enough, in the shape of a bull-headed demon type god sacrificing children. Fast forward to today, you have the bull-headed demon that's also a god of sexual perversions and sexual pleasures. Again, going back to Moloch. And look at the child abuse. You can go back and you see the imagery on that, like 1983. I think it was one of the magazines, Awake or Watchtower. I did a video on it way back, like one of my first videos, where you can see the subliminal images of a bull's head, and it's talking about child sexual abuse, sacrificing of the child, sacrificing the innocents, laying them low, bringing them to destruction. Because I'll be the first one to tell you that it can destroy your life. I lived it. I'm still living with some of the repercussions of it now, and I probably will be to the day I die. Now, so let's rewind that a little bit then and go back to the sacrificing of children. You got the imagery. And so this was all stuff that was understood instantly in people's minds. Right? They knew this. You have this imagery of a bull, a demon god that wanted to sacrifice, wanted you to kill your children. Oh, here's the other thought I was missing. They also promoted hedonism with the worship of Moloch. The idea was to go join this hedonistic lifestyle, and then the fruits of that you now sacrifice to Moloch. Kind of click some stuff into place when you start thinking about it. So the idea of Gehenna in hell being this place of destruction, it kind of makes sense, right? Now let's look at, and I wanted to do a shout out to YouTube channel, excuse me, JW Escape, because I watched a video she did. And I hadn't even been looking at it at this angle of it, but it kind of jogged some stuff. She did a video about Abaddon and Apollyon from Revelation 9:11, and how the Jehovah's Witnesses theology ascribes the name Abaddon and Apollyon to Jesus. They say this is Jesus. That this name in the Bible, in Revelation 9:11, Abaddon, they say this is Jesus. Now that word means destruction. It means to bring low. It means desolation. This would have been the same words that would have been understood to be referencing someplace like Gehenna. Now, that's destruction. Go look at more symbology. I realized that the Bible wasn't in chapters and verses originally, right? Go back and look at 9/11. Look at the date of 9/11, and you'll find some pretty significant destruction occurring throughout history on 9/11. And Revelation 9/11 is what is the numbers ascribed to referencing Abaddon and Apollyon, which would have been either one of the fallen, if not the chief fallen. So it kind of clicks some stuff into place on Jehovah's Witness theology also about worshiping a reverent with or have at least having a reverence for destruction. They look forward to Armageddon. It's like some great thing to them. But when in the Bible is Jesus ever referred to as destruction? It's always life. And like I don't ever see Jesus being called destruction or being one that brings to ruin. When that's all of that is what is implied with the name Abaddon. You go back and look at the uses for it 6 times in Scripture, once in the New Testament, 5 times in the Old. Do a little bit of research. It's going to be pretty easy to see that that's not a name that you would associate with Jesus. Anyway, so what is hell then? Again, go back to the Near Eastern way of thinking, and you look at imagery. Let's go back all the way to the story of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, as some Bibles translate it. That doesn't really do it justice. It would be more about, or like eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. That doesn't capture the essence of what that says. We're going to be looking more like at consuming or partaking in, coming to know these things that bring good or bring evil. That's again not a good explanation of it, but we go back to the original wording, and it's a okay way to say it in English, but there's a lot more depth to it. There's imagery there, and it kind of makes you stop to think, do I think, like, for one, I don't think it was an actual tree. Like, I just don't. I think it was imagery. But again, that comes into rightly dividing or trying to understand what the scriptures are saying. Sometimes that can be difficult. And I'm not saying that I have the answer. I'm just saying this is my take on it. So when they decided to partake in knowing good and evil, now think of the word knowing. What is it to know someone's name? So in Jewish culture, knowing someone and their name, it wasn't like me, Will. It was knowing a character. It was knowing who they were. Go fast forward to the Greek and look at gnosko. This means everlasting life, you coming to know. So that it's an intimate relationship. So Adam and Eve partook of an intimate relationship of knowing good and evil. Now, it seems they overstepped, obviously, according to the Bible, right? And they, they paid a price for that. And so, again, start thinking about this and ask yourself, what is hell? Let's fast forward to the story of Cain and Abel. Why didn't God just kill Cain? He even had him marked with the mark of Cain. So that signified basically he was not allowed to die. No one was allowed to kill him. He was granted life. That was his punishment. He was cursed. And you think about it, some people think like death is that's punishment. Like, someone kills someone else, just kill them. I mean, I'm not saying I don't agree with that at times, right? But at the same time, man, living your life and dealing with the repercussions of that can be far more punishment than just getting a bullet to the head. Far more punishment. I mean, dying is easy. Living's hard. Dying's the easy part. Like, I've been around. I've been around enough death to know that dying is the easy part. Again, it's all perspective, right? So, again, what is hell? What does it mean? So, you have a lot of people that will describe hell as separation from God. I would agree with that. Now, you're going to have some people instantly that'll say, "Oh, that doesn't mean separation from God." Well, there's people that are just scratching the surface. They're not looking deep. They're not actually having, ears to hear and eyes to see, in my opinion. Like, and again, I'm not saying I have it all right, just my opinions, right? My take on stuff. So if hell is separation from God, what does that look like? I would say it's in large part the human existence. Think of the life Adam and Eve had, and then what they lost, and then had to go and experience for the rest of their lives. That was separation from God. They were directly separated from God as their punishment, and then look at their life after that. That sure seems like hell to me, right? Again, their punishment was separation from God. Look at Cain. God used to hang out with the dude, right? And he got separated from God and cursed. That sure sounds like a lot of hell to me, right? And so let's go back again to what the word Abaddon means: destruction, bringing low. And that's the word that's used for hell. Often, you got five instances in the Old Testament, and look at the imagery being used there. It's not just death. It's talking about a state of being. It's the realm of the dead. It's the realm of separation from life. What is life biblically? Life is God and living with Him and you, and then hopefully attaining a higher level of existence once you put on the oikoterion, right? And so I would argue that hell sure can be right here on earth. I look at my life, until I became a Christian, until I found God, and God, well, not that God found me. He, he knew where I was the whole time, and life was hell. There was no peace. I would have moments of peace, right? Moments of joy, very fleeting. Um, I did a lot of things that as a Christian I wouldn't do now, and there's nothing that lasted. You take for instance the hedonistic style of life. There's no, it's all temporary. There's nothing that lasts there. And a lot of times you don't really feel good about it afterwards. Like there's no, you're missing a connection there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's probably a good thing. So when thinking about hell, also think about extra biblical texts, and ones that look at the religions that talk about karma and reincarnation and where some of these ideas come from. And I'm not saying I believe in reincarnation. I'm just, again, using an example. Now, if you don't measure up, you then don't get to reach this better life, this better existence, and you're basically doomed to the repetition of hell, right? You might advance, might not be as bad, but man, if you got bad karma, you're gonna go backward, just like chutes and ladders. But there's, no one ever can get to the end. They skipped a level or something, right? And that sounds a lot like hell to me. So think of that as an eternal type thing. And I don't know where my views lie on hell, honestly. that if there would ever be a way out or not, because of just some of the deep imagery that exists. I don't know. I haven't done study on it, to be honest with you. I've done very little looking into eschatology as well. It just hasn't been on my radar till very recently. Like I just it's not something I've cared about. Not to sound like nonchalant about part of the Bible, but it's just I don't really care that much about eschatology. But lately I've been looking into it more for some reason. I feel like I've been prompted to, so I have been some, right? Yeah, like 2 videos in a row talking about Revelation. That's a first. Well, one was a first, but two, that's I guess it's the second, right? Anyway, so when we look at the concepts of hell, we also can't really be dogmatic with it because we don't really know. But again, stick to the imagery of what it's saying. That there is there's a very clear line being made on what is good, what is bad, eating from consuming that good or bad, and then what that does to you. So, and this is also a theme not only in you'll find it obviously in like reincarnation with Buddhism, Hinduism, some of the Sikh religions, I believe, others, and you'll find similar things to that outside of those religions. So take the Native American legend, not legend, but story about the two wolves. You got this good wolf, you got this bad wolf, and not just not bad wolf. Like I mean, if we're talking like good dude, evil dude, right? Which one's gonna live? Which one is gonna prevail in you? Which wolf are you gonna be? It's the wolf that you feed. If you practice love, love begets love, but evil begets evil. That's what the Native American story of the two wolves is talking about. Now let's go to Proverbs 4:18. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness or ex Jehovah's Witness, you know this scripture well. Of course, the Jehovah's Witnesses don't exactly use it properly. Big surprise. So Proverbs 4:18 and 19, it says, this is from the NASB. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn that shines brighter and brighter until the full day. So by feeding the proper wolf, the trajectory gets better and better, right? Reincarnate, or the idea of reincarnation and karma. You do the right stuff and you advance further, right? Go to verse 19. The way of the wicked is like darkness. They do not know over what they stumble. So you feed evil and it's just going to get worse, right? You're not even going to know what you're doing anymore. Look at secularism. Look at the 20th century. More people have been killed due to secularism than all of religion put together. My understanding, anyway. Go crunch the numbers. It's pretty shocking. Look at Mao's China. Look at communist Russia. I mean, look at Nazi Germany, right? That you can go from trying to start they start painting they start painting the Jews and other sects of not sects other groups of humans as evil, right? They start this road of saying we need to get rid of these people, then they become evil, and you see this progression, and then we get all the way down to where then we gotta burn books and stuff, right? Because knowledge of the past, that's not okay. They don't even realize what they're doing. And think of information control, cult behavior, right? Well, look at and carry that over to Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh, you can't. You got to destroy the old literature. You got to turn it in or destroy it. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why were the Nazis trying to control information? Think about it. Then go forward. You got concentration camps. And then go to the Nuremberg trials. Let's look at the Nuremberg trials, right? I was just following orders. Some of those dudes, you could tell they really didn't get it. Or some of you can see it clicked, though, at some point, some of these people that were on trial. Where at the moment, in the moment, they had been taking steps down this evil path to the point they didn't even know what they were stumbling over, to quote from Proverbs 4:19. You fed the wrong wolf. You went down the wrong path. You were helping create a hell here on earth, right? So you also got the old adage of it's a slippery slope. All feeds into the same stuff. So what are the moral implications of a hell, though, right? It comes down to partly worldview. If you don't believe in creation by a being, if you don't believe in moralism, if you believe in morals, you kind of have to have a moral lawgiver. Otherwise, if there's nothing that sets morals, then everything's okay, right? So if this tribe over here believes in mutilating of women's genitalia, well, that's part of their culture. So according to, like the secular worldview and relativism, that's okay. You can't tell them they're wrong because who are you to say? There's no lawgiver. There's no moral lawgiver, right? You can go down that rabbit hole for a while, believe me. So we look at creation and the world we live in. We have a few options. We think about creation and God and morals and the concepts of hell versus life, right? Heaven or hell. A lot of people are really upset about hell. That's, I think, because they've been taught wrong. But think about it. You had one option was to create nothing. God didn't have to. He didn't have to make anything, right? You had another option. He could have made like an amoral world where everything goes, nothing's good or bad. That would kind of line up with relativism, right? There's no good or bad. Just do whatever, because that would be anarchy, right? Kind of like the rebellion of the devil, right? Self rule and forget everyone else. Whatever you want to do is fine. So you got the option of making nothing, making a world without any morals. Then you have the option of, well, you could make a world and you could make everyone worship you. But then that's also not, it doesn't allow for the message of the Bible, right? It doesn't allow for love. Because if everyone loves you, well, if everyone is just is pre-programmed, then it's not really love, it's just slavery, right? And they just it's like being an automaton, it's like being a robot. You're a slave to the program. You can't do anything about it. There's nothing, there wouldn't be any love there. It would just be. So I guess when I talk about what are the moral implications, obviously from a Christian worldview, right? And with love being the highest moral, the highest principle. So we come to option 4 of how do you create a world with love? You would have to have free will in order to have love. But in order to have free will, some bad stuff's also gonna happen, right? And I understand that's not easy for a lot of people. And as someone that has had a lot of bad stuff happen, I get it. I get the frustration. It also takes a lot of contemplating, though. Like, dig deep if it's something that bothers you, then actually start digging deep into the theories that I've spoken of. Go look at people that talk about like the moral implications, and don't just look at one side, right? Figure it out for yourself, looking at what the Bible says. And so what then are the moral implications of having a hell, having a separation from God. Well, we choose that, though, also, right? We would choose that separation. But here's the other thing about that, my separation from God, because I was separated from him for most of my life, taught me a lot. And it's helped me to have a lot more compassion and understanding for people now. And if biblically, um, there's going to be some of us that are going to be judging, in order to have a fair judge, you would have to know what someone went through. So, who judges biblically overall, like over everything, right? Is it the Father or Jesus? It's not the Father, it's Jesus, right? Why Jesus? He's been there, done that, experienced it, knows what it's like. Not just he knows what it's like experientially. God knows what it's like from an observation point of view, right? Though the Father, rather, knows what it's like from an observation point of view. Jesus knows it experientially. He gets it. So he's going to be able to judge a whole lot more fairly than someone that has no clue or just saw a video of it, right? And so play that forward to us. Don't you even know that you'd be judging the angels, right? Forget the scripture. There's a few references to Christians judging others after this life. But to be a fair judge, you kind of have to go through some stuff. You kind of have to learn. I mean, God Himself did that. Jesus came down and is now can be a fair judge. Right? Just my thoughts. So, yeah, I still got about an hour before I wake the kids up for school, so I'm gonna go do something else. Y'all have a good one.